Hi, I'm Taewei Wang. This lecture is on Chapter 13 of System Analysis and Design, Spirit and Topi's book. Chapter 13 is about user interface design for software application. And we also talk about user experience design, which is a very hot topic in the field of almost any, including software design, but also in other field of design, artistic design, magazine design, and architecture design, and so on. It is a extremely interesting chapter if you're actually doing the design. But however, when we are reading the book, it presents you with a lot of principle. Hopefully, you can relate those principles to some of your everyday experience in using computer user interface. Now, before I start the actual lecture or summary of the chapter, I would like to introduce you to a website, and this is a website called User Experience Research website on Google. And this particular project used to be called the Google Usability Lab. Its main mission is just basically study all the people using Google services and try to figure out the best way to design the interface or the application so that user has the highest satisfaction and Google can retain and use the user information to, profit for the organization. When you sign up with the user experience research, you will be actively join their research team, and they will collect on what you do on the Google application over time, and you will realize more about the process of user interface design. I briefly mentioned this term usability when I introduced the Google user interface research. Usability is traditionally in user interface design we use to describe how good is the user interface, or actually to assess the quality of software. So you would describe that the software is useful. And so the important definition about usability is quite important. And your textbook borrowed from the ISO standard. This is a quality standard describing usability. There are three categories of the usability: effectiveness, efficiency, and user satisfaction. If you recall, we have learned a theoretical model called the technology acceptance model. And if you compare the definition of usability, you will find a lot of similarity in here. And later, when we see other principle of user interface design, you will see further similarity, and hopefully you can identify the similarity analogy and know that most of the principles are very similar to each other. Just to refresh your memory, two most important concepts in technology acceptance model are perceived effectiveness and perceived ease of use. And here we see effectiveness and we also see user satisfaction. Both are very close to each other. And of course, the modern and the hottest topic in the design field is probably user experience design. And our textbook didn't use the abbreviation, but a lot of time you will see the abbreviation of UX or UXD as the description of user interface design, or the label for user experience design. And some people will also call this type of concept as user interaction design. Regardless of its user experience or user interaction, they all refer to similar concept. The basic principle is that you need to get user to involve in the design process, and user will be the center. So again, looking at some of the user experience design components or principle, you also see utility, usefulness, usability, ease of use, and desirability and brand experience. In addition to the two important concepts in technology acceptance model, author will meet many different researchers will add different additional contextual concept to support the idea of user experience design. And I hope that you can relate these concepts to your own experience. And desirability is in fact a slightly different concept compared to the usefulness and ease of use. But brand experience, you can probably see that the brand and the desirability, they are somehow related to each other. As a matter of fact, all these four components are related to one another. It's just that it will be from the system analyst's perspective or business analyst perspective between you and me, then this is the goal of our system analysis and design course. Understand these components is important for you to evaluate or actually to design a process or program whenever you have the need to get into this user experience design field. Now, in marketing field, you probably heard about this term called pilot group study or pilot study. And the company called Gillette was actually very famous of conducting pilot study. Basically, they will invite a bunch of real user to their research lab, and when they are try to create a new version of the razors, they will have all these people in the pilot group to try first. And actually, it was a very extensive testing in the process of getting user to express their opinion, to like or dislike, or even recommend some design feature in the new generation of the product. And that similar concept being used in the software design field. We just call them user experience. But of course, be cautious that designing a software is, of course, different from designing a physical product. So user experience do have a lot more component than the traditional pilot group study. Traditional pilot group study is more a lab or sort of highly controlled experiment type of study. And user experience is more or less open-ended and something what we call the open system type of field study. So let's very quickly compare a few different user experience design principle. And this is the ISO, again, the standard or quality standard ISO 9000 series principles. It has 6 principles. Understand the users, engage the user, usability design driven by user-centered, design process should be iterative, and address user experience as a whole, and so on and so forth. You can probably see that this concept is very closely linked to the agile methodology we mentioned earlier in other chapter, and it also described the process of iterative and get user feedback in the process. The next one is the Nielsen's heuristic, and this particular set of principle is more at the implementation level. It's very detailed in terms of how you actually design a user interface, and it focuses much more on the principle to control the actual outcome other than the methodology. So, and this is actually can be considered as a grading sheet for a user interface design. The previous user interface or user-centered design principle can be more considered as a higher level methodology level principles. In 2016, there is a set of a principle called Schneiderman's Golden Rule. These rules are somewhere in between the Nielsen's heuristic and the user-centered design. It also focuses much more or less at evaluating user interface, and but it does have some specific guideline for you to follow. Design the dialogue, error handling, and that sort of important detail level guidelines for you to follow. Similarly, we have in 2010 this human-computer collaboration principle. It's not human-computer interaction. HCI is a special term to describe the general field of user interface design. But human-computer collaboration is specifically for user experience design before the term user experience design become popular. The term user experience design became more popular, I believe, somewhere around 2011 and 12. After that, that term become slowly coming out of the artistic design world and kind of spilling through our software development field. And this data principle is kind of resonant with the user-centered design principle described in the ISO standard. So the ISO standard and human-computer collaboration are two standards at a higher level methodology level. Nielsen's heuristic and Schneiderman's golden rules are at the detailed user interface evaluation level principle. And it is important to get into user interface design because it is actually at the most relevant level for everyday person to understand, to experience the software development. So a lot of the organization and methodology, including the methodology we learned called extreme programming, as well as the Scrum method, all describing the use of prototype and close user interaction to get feedback. So a lot of time the design is not a top-down process. It's more kind of interactive or even button-up process to get the final feature of your software application. And you see now on this slide, you see that we have these two acronym, UX and UI, described in the slides already. From the architecture, the framework perspective, the textbook framework, you can see it's described either late in the stage or end in the particular process. So we are getting to design more than the analysis in this particular chapter. Figure 13-3 showing you something like a front office, back office type of concept. Most of the user, and including a lot of business analysts, only see the front end, which is the component below the black hard lines on this particular diagram. So it is important to understand or actually have some sort of a method and modeling method to document the user interface design. And we will see a couple of them. And most of the modern day user interface design are documented through just a prototype. So you don't actually need to provide a graphical document. You simply provide a working or non-working prototype to show your user interface design. And this particular page shows you a few important terminology in user interface design. Both feature and screen are easy to understand. It's just the important feature functionalities or something that user need to achieve that been showing up on your computer. Metaphor, control, and affordance are three important you can say design criteria or design guidance that you can follow to achieve a generally good user interface design. Metaphor is basically saying that you need to use something that connect the user to a world that the user can experience or can relate to. So we probably heard about that we usually call our computer interface as our desktop. So the desktop is actually a human world, the desktop analogy. So using that metaphor to create your user interface is usually a good idea to relate the user from the physical world to the virtual world. And control is something that is also tied directly to human nature. And we as human beings are actually try to be in control all the time with your hand, with your voice, and with some command. So if you lose control, regular people will have some sort of a panic or they will be have fears in the process. So give users a sense of control is important. So a lot of time when you see your computer is crashing and you click on your mouse, you type in your keyboard, you even press on your power button and the machine doesn't respond, that will give you some scare because you lost control. And finally, we have this very vague terms called affordance. Affordance is a concept like it's more like a feeling that you feel like it's just right. Right? Say a typical example will be you look at iPhone design versus Android phone design, and many people will say, well, it just seems like iPhone interface is right. If you really compare iPhone and Android phone side by side, and you can probably find that their features are very similar, but for unknown reason, and you feel like they're slightly more advantage, you feel just right fit for you to use the iPhone interface. So that concept is called affordance. It's comfortably fall into your realm of using the system. So that's called affordance. So, summarize from all these principles we have learned: the Nielsen's heuristic, the golden rule, the user-centered collaboration design, and the ISO standard of user experience design. All these put together give you an overall sort of like a grading sheet or some sort of you can look even more like a checkbox. So you just put a table with all these principles in there, and next time when you have experience to evaluate a software, say a lot of these app in Apple Store or in your cell phone, Android Store, Play Store, Google Play Store, that asks you to evaluate the software. In the past, you probably just evaluate the software based on your intuition. You just I feel it's good or bad. But now you can actually evaluate those software in much more details and with a proper criticism if they didn't do very well on certain things. Say they some software may not do very well with error handling. It just froze there sometimes and not doing anything. Other software may be slow in response, so the user lose control, sense of control. So those kind of things now can become your criteria, and you can become a better critics in user interface as well as the software application. And the rest of the chapter is pretty much your textbook try to give you some example of different family of user interface design. You have this menu-based or icon-based design, and you have a way of showing design in a dialogue format. The first dialogue should be something, follow up, and what option is there. And some people draw this this is a class diagram format. Some people will even draw this in an activity diagram format as well. And there are also very detailed principle on how do you use different component in user interface design. These are some of the older topic that we teach students when you finish up your programming class, and now you need to know which visual component you should be using when you are designing your software, especially during the user interaction, including input data or clicking or select some functions or features from your user interface. So more example in the textbook as well on the drop-down menu, checkbox, all these are different options and you can select from. And each one of them has their benefit or proper place for use, and you can take a look at this. The last one, the picker, the calendar type of thing, is actually a very problematic, and without taking too much time of the lecture to make the lecture too long, I would say that this all related to our human brain functions. So our brain processing power is limited in a short period of time. So when we are using a user interface, you got to design the user interface in a way that the regular human being brain can handle. The calendar input, for example, I found a lot of calendar lacking the function of go directly into the right place. Say, for example, if you ask the user to enter birthday from a calendar, And the current and calendar usually hinge on the current day. So if you are born in like 1995, and the calendar you have like scroll back 25 times to get that particular year. And for me, for example, I was born in the 60s. I have to go back 50 times to get to the right place. That actually violates a lot of design principle we talked about earlier in previous slide. So other than use the right component to design your user interface, this is actually traditionally be number one uh, recommendation in user interface design. It's called error handling or providing support in case of error. And you probably find this very troublesome as well. A lot of time when your application, Microsoft Office or even Windows or Macintosh or give you some error message when you are using something. But most of the time, those error message are what you call doesn't means anything because those error messages are written by a programmer. They use their jargon and terminology. A regular user like you and me, well, yeah, I'm trained more or less, but yeah, regular users usually read those error messages has no and have no clue how to fix those error message. Those will frustrate the user and violate the user experience design principle. So from this point on, I would recommend you to read a little bit more about each one of this principle and try to see if those make sense to you. So these are some additional user issue to consider in terms of the support, in terms of the search feature, and also how do you design interactively, and during the process, how do you try to make sure that you get the right response from the user. And in our assignment, we have a video that is coming out of a 2010 end user software engineering, sort of like a small academic group. They talk about this surprise and explain and reward cycle. And I will encourage you to think about that. You keep the user surprise first, and like you tell them something wrong is in the user interface, and based on those surprise, user give you some feedback, and you explain to the user. Finally, you reward user with a better version of the software. So that cycle is very important in terms of designing interactive user interface or involve user in the interactive process for design. Connecting the user interface design to some of the older tools that we have learned, use case model for documenting the user requirement. And it actually fits as well. You can use case as a tool to document when you involve user in the process. And one of the important thing is that a lot of time we will derive the acceptance criteria and make this acceptance criteria as a non-functional requirement for your use case model. And a lot of time these become important contract material because when you write a contract with a software provider, you need to be specific about what you ask the software company to provide. So you will see actually if you go back to the template of a use case narrative, there are certain acceptance criteria. There is actually a field you have to fill out the acceptance criteria. And finally, that the textbook introduced you to some special concern about mobile device. It has a smaller screen size. It's less visible, especially say different age group. The older you get, the harder to read. The small font size. The connectivity is another issue for mobile phone user interface design. So all these issues need to be considered in a special environment. So I believe following all these principles and methodologies that we learn from this particular chapter, you can be a very good user interface critic and may be able to involve user if you have a chance to design a user interface for your user. And I believe you will have that chance. Nowadays, if you become a data analyst, you will be designing charts and interactive chart. And that is also an example of user interface design. And you need to be sure the report and the chart you're building are friendly and acceptable to the user. So there you have chapter 13. And the lecture is relatively fast, and do try to go over each one of the slide and think each one of the principle you learn or criteria you learn from this chapter to see if that makes sense at all. If something out of your common sense, that will be the place you want to raise question and discuss with me. Until next time, bye.